So what I'll do initially is I'll let each of the panelists just introduce them briefly, and then we'll just jump into the questions. We were actually running a little bit over time, and I apologise about that. So we'll just start here with Nigel. Nigel is a last-minute replacement for Brian O'Kelly, but he's as good as Brian. You know, he's a good lad. You know, so he's able to answer these questions. So take it away, Nigel.
Okay, so that's a bit of a hard introduction to follow, isn't it? My name's Nigel Gilbert. I'm the commercial sales director for AppNexus in Europe. Clearly, if you look at the picture in the brochure, I'm not Brian. I'm sorry to disappoint. I don't know if I'm necessarily as funny or as tall, but yeah, hopefully we can cover everything we need to.
My name is Brian Lesser. I'm the CEO of Xaxis. Xaxis is a Group M company. What we do is we use data and technology to help advertisers reach audiences at scale.
My name is Shevlin. I am Business Development Director for EMEA at IPONWEB, and we're powering a lot of the RTB technology that exists today.
My name is Gustav Mellentin. I'm CEO of Adform. So we started out 10 years ago, mainly in the ad tech, ad serving industry, and within the last year or so, we've been entering the DSP space. So I guess that's the main reason we're here today.
And my name is Erich Wasserman. I'm a co-founder and general manager for EMEA for MediaMath. MediaMath was the first DSP in the market back in 2007, and we're expanding quickly into the European market.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. The first question is basically just the general overview question. I mean, we've seen automated buying grow significantly across Europe. Obviously, there's a little bit further to go in Germany. Some sales houses are working putting inventory through RTB, some are not. I'm just throw it out there initially. I mean, how is technology evolving sort of the media buying process, particularly around data-driven display? Nigel.
Okay, sure. So we've obviously seen some fundamental, I think, changes in the way technology's changed the landscape. We probably have to look first at what the suppliers can now take the benefit of. There's, of course, the better organization of their inventory. This is probably one of the biggest differences. When you see the way the networks evolved over the last, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years in any country, they were to some extent taking advantage of the fact that publishers could not organize themselves properly. So I think certainly technology's made a very big difference there. On the buy side, it's probably the case that the demand partners can now bring more data to the fore. That's, again, improved dramatically the way that they can actually execute some of the most valuable data that's available in the market, and again, previously not necessarily very usable, not very addressable. But I would say probably the most consequential is the skill set. I think we're now seeing publishers, agencies, platforms, technology providers having to rely on a different type of individual when they recruit. I think the skill set that people are now bringing on board is completely different. And I think in terms of the way the landscape's changing, that's probably one of the most consequential.
Brian, you've seen quite a lot of change. I mean, you're heading up quite a big department within the holding company. I mean, what kind of fundamental changes have you seen within your organization, and how that relates to Europe as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 3 things. First is simply efficiency. There's a lot of talk about what real-time bidding can do in terms of the marketplace, but probably the most important thing is it simply makes it more efficient for advertisers to buy media through an agency, through a trading desk, through a company like Xaxis. So that's very, very important to us, is to remove some of the friction that was previously involved in buying display or video or social, mobile, et cetera. Second thing is obviously allows us to target audiences more effectively, which doesn't discount the importance of context, which is still important. Creative is still very important, but now we can use data to more effectively reach hyper-targeted audiences. And then the third thing is I think it brings a lot of innovation back into a medium that frankly had gotten fairly stale, which is display. We can now do things that make advertisers smarter by way of using different data sets, offline data, online data, and also holding the medium accountable by making it more measurable, and measurable in a way that advertisers understand from offline media, like how many people that I served a digital display ad to actually go into a store and buy something. We can now use this technology to make it much more measurable.
And Shane, you guys see a lot of the market as well. I mean, how do you see how you have changed the way companies buy media, particularly around display?
I think RTB has, to a certain extent, very much leveled the playing field. I think in Henning's opening piece this morning, he referred to what characterizes the online advertising industry being the relationships between buyers and publishers. And ultimately, RTB has really opened up possibilities for how that relationship can evolve. Secondly, I think in terms of how to optimize your campaigns, whether you're a traditional brand advertiser, whether you're looking at pure performance play, the scope is almost limitless. And what really is important is the function to which you optimize.
This is an interesting one. You say level and playing field. I mean, you've seen quite a lot of new companies emerge in the display space. I mean, Erich, you must work with a couple of them as well. I mean, how do you see, like RTB, has it sort of allowed new businesses to come through and sort of leverage the data to deliver on a display channel that has kind of been seen in a negative light by some marketers over the years?
I think fundamentally what's happening in the market is a scalable proposition, right? So the changes that an individual user makes have a great deal of business impact. Meeting that demand are publishers who are recognizing the value that the automated markets bring, recognizing the value of participating in a global marketplace, achieving the capturing of incremental budgets. We have clients buying from California in Germany, right? These are not, so these fundamentals are changing the way in which buyers are approaching the market. It takes a number of different forms. I think holding companies, for example, assimilating technologies, building their own technologies to access these markets, and that fundamentally retools the way in which the buyer thinks about accessing the display media markets, increasingly mobile, increasingly video. And then other models, MediaMath launched a company called Spree 7 based in Berlin, and this model is very much recognizes that there is a market for services around RTB to complement that scale and grow the market for individual advertisers and agencies who need that service. So, the scalability of the market means that these movements have great business impact and they manifest themselves a bit differently.
And display, is it back in vogue, Gustav? Are you seeing your clients put more budget in there because of this type of trading?
Sorry, was that at me?
No. Sorry, I was looking at Gustav and then sorry, apologies.
I think we're seeing definitely that we're seeing the ability for display advertisers to spend much more money on continuous activities, for example. So we had, over the last many years, when you go to Adform, you have a display campaign that starts at X and ends at Y, but we're seeing much more that people are thinking as this is an alternative to search, as a continuous performance channel. So I think that's exciting. I think also what we're seeing, with RTB is the ability for the long tail to suddenly come into displays. Even looking at a little company like Adform,
little company?
Well, little in terms of in the advertising space, right? So for us, it's very easy to start a campaign across 12, 20 countries and run a very targeted campaign. And we don't, sorry to say, we don't need, the agencies right here. We don't need to talk to the publishers. We can actually ourselves operate the whole campaign directly and be very efficient doing that. So I think that, to me, that's a great change, that you're able to get in the long tail into the advertising as well.
It's interesting, we talk about these startups. A lot of people initially started using DSPs and the agencies and the smaller players as well. But it seems to have moved away from one size fits all to a customizable model. The whole idea of local versus global. Do you think the customized solution is going to have to come in, like markets like Germany obviously are going to work in a different way than France and the UK? And different advertisers have different needs. Could we see the likes of a gambling DSP or solutions like that? Is that the way we're going as well in the space?
I think you have to have a customizable platform. I don't see how. If you look at the nature of a black box or something that is closed to the client, they can't necessarily see how it's working, they can't change it, then you can't necessarily make it relevant to your business. You're just effectively outsourcing. It's just a modern day version of a network. So I think that customization is critical. obviously we offer a reasonably strong level of customization. I think you need to know where the line is. You know, do you need to go ahead and build your entire stack, or do you just need to have a bidder that can access a certain source of inventory that's connected to all of the right sources of demand, but then you can customize the algorithm if you want to. You can customize the interface. You can drag apps onto the desktop. Now, that is an appropriate level of customization. I think if you're building something from the ground up, you have to worry about all of your API relationships. You have to worry about integrating to all of the demand sources. And you have to ask yourself a question, is that what you want to spend your time doing? Do you have the time and the resource to do that? Or do you just need to tap into something that gives you an appropriate level of customization? So I think there's a trade-off, and that's different per country, per client, without question.
Brian, you've got lots of clients. You know, WP's got a handful of clients, you know, here and there and everywhere. I mean, do you envisage a situation where you'll have different algorithms running for different clients because they have different requirements in display campaigns? Or is this just like, are we pushing the boat out too far?
Yeah, I mean, before we get into algorithms, I think it's global and it's local. We have, you know, within Xaxis, we have 600 clients that we work with across 13 offices. We'll have 25 offices by the end of the year. Those clients want to know that when they give us a brief that spans geographies, that we're going to be able to execute on that brief. And it's an audience brief, meaning find me this audience and deliver me that objective. So we have to figure out how to execute that on a market-by-market basis. The local part comes in where every market is different. So for example, in Germany, our business looks much different than it looks in the US or the UK. In Germany, we have direct relationships with publishers. We generally do not buy from ad exchanges, and frankly, we prefer it that way. We have excellent relationships with publishers. We pay a fair price for inventory, and we are able to audience target with the technology we have. In the US, we're more reliant on ad exchanges. But from a client perspective, they expect us to deliver an audience against certain metrics and make them smarter. You know, as I said, there's a lot of talk about performance, and that's driving CPA down. That's a big part of our business. But if in 5 years we're still talking about this as a performance business, we've probably all failed. This is about innovation and making advertisers smarter, not just about driving down the cost of media and driving down CPAs.
Shane, you do a lot of customizable stuff. What's your view? Obviously, you say yes, like, but
I think I agree with a lot of what Brian and Nigel have said. I think your starting point as a buyer of media should be a defensible one. In other words, you should choose a technology provider that addresses your specific business needs, but defensible also means that you're baking in a degree of forward compatibility with how the market shifts. So in other words, being in a position to be ready to react as your advertiser requirements change, or your own direct requirements change if you're an advertiser.
And it's interesting. The last couple of months, we've seen a lot of companies position themselves as the glorified one stack fits all. You know, we had MediaOcean did their merger with DDS and who's the other? I can't remember. But you know, and obviously you've got Google who offer a complete suite. I mean, I'm just wondering that, you know, because this will become an issue in Germany as well as you go on. You know, is there an argument for a complete stack in terms of frictionless buying? I mean, Erich, you know, you obviously sit on one side of the fence. What's your view? And do you think that we need a complete stack, or do we need sort of friction between the buy and sell side?
Great question. I think the constituencies in the market need to be respected with technology that achieves their individual goals. So when the consideration comes due as to what companies and what technologies that, much to Nigel's point, need to be interoperable, need to assimilate the various needs of individual constituents. Of primary concern to our clients is who do you serve, right? At the end of the day, how does your product roadmap lend to the products and services that are needed in order to maximize ROI for an advertiser, for their agency? So we certainly feel very strongly that that focus has many ramifications, both immediately and down the line strategically for the client and for the buy side in general. And reciprocally, publishers need really good technology that's going to afford them access to demand, certainly, but via platforms such as our own. And they need to know that the value of their media is being respected and that they are achieving the right yield for the audiences that they're working hard to pull into their sites. So, so I think differentiation in the market is clear, and the smart buyers are seeing very different value propositions from both sides of the equation and making the right choices accordingly.
Nigel, you operate on the buy side and the sell side at AppNexus. I mean, you could be the complete stack as well. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously I firmly believe that there are genuine benefits to operating on one platform, yeah. As this is my chance to be a little bit more like Brian, real-time decisioning is real-time decisioning, whether you're making it on the buy side or the sell side. There are different implications, intricacies, and how they integrate it into their business, but the concept is the same. So if you have a platform that's in the middle, that's able to execute on these decisions, assuming that your warehousing is big enough, and this comes back to the point of starting it from your own perspective, you need to tap into something that's able to accommodate that kind of volume, then you're going to see genuine benefits. I mean, there's no question that a standalone product, whether it be on the buy side or the sell side, an SSP or whatever it might be, is to some extent isolated. It doesn't have a direct relationship with anybody on the buy side. Every single connection it has is to another server. That's not efficient. There are obvious inefficiencies. I'm not as techie as probably a lot of people here, but even I know that that's not an efficient relationship. You have to try and bring the two things together. You can pass data between the two more effectively. There's no leakage. You can see 100%. There's no discrepancies. There are financial benefits between the two things, clearly, because one platform can't recoup from both sides. Obviously, I'm possibly biased. You look at a company I work for, you could argue I'm biased. But I think that to some extent it's obvious that the efficiencies can't be ignored.
Brian, would you like to own an end-to-end stack? Would that be on your Christmas list, would it?
Yeah, so I have less of a problem with an end-to-end stack because I agree that there are efficiencies to just making the plumbing work. My issue is when you have a technology company that's also a media company, because then you're compromising objectivity. So, we've built technology on the demand side. We have no interest in building technology on the supply side, and that tends to work for us. Other agencies have taken the approach of partnering with companies that have the full technology stack. So that's fine too, but you start to compromise the objectivity of the agency when that company is also a media company, because it becomes difficult to buy outside of the inventory that's represented by the sort of hybrid technology media company.
Interesting. I mean, it just seems to me that this space continues to be dominated by the holding companies in terms of the budgets that are available. I'm just wondering how difficult the process has been of moving the business away from the traditional buying model to a model that seems to be more akin to the ad network world in terms of the optimization. I mean, Brian, you can kick this question off, but I'm sure everybody could speak in the panel because everybody's working with an agency holding company. The process internally could have been, you're working with multiple companies within your holding agency. I mean, how difficult has that process been? Has it been drawing the horse to water, or is it?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think it's probably the top priority for us within the agencies is education, just talking about what the technology means. When we created, so previously to Xaxis, I started a company called Media Innovation Group, which, our pitch was all about technology. And we went into the agencies and we talked about the benefit of big data and technology and DSPs and algorithms. And honestly, it was the exact wrong approach, because the agencies have a job to do, which is to buy media for their clients. And they need to understand what the possibilities are, not how the technology works. So when we created Xaxis, which is not a technology company, but a company that uses technology, we talked about the benefits. So the innovation that can occur as a result of using data and technology. And we talked about the benefits of targeting audiences. And that's worked very, very well for us. Now, there are some clients that are more technical that want to get into the algorithms and the technology stack, and we're very happy to do that. But the process has been difficult. I'd say we're making great progress. We work very effectively with the 4 Group M agencies. As I mentioned, we have 600 advertisers. But we never stop educating on the possibilities of the technology.
If Erich, well, Erich and Gustav, I'll go to Erich first, but you two guys work with a lot of agencies. I mean, how has this fundamentally changed their business model?
So I think in every organization we work for, or we work with rather, there are stars, and those individuals are now afforded the opportunity to focus less on trafficking and more on math, more on analytics, and more on strategy on behalf of their clients. What we do see is, frankly, software matters, and this sort of gets back to the point of the focus of a technology organization. Who are you building your software for? Building a software for a publisher-focused constituency is very different from building that for an agency base of clients, and that bears directly on adoption of the technology, scalability of the technology, revenue under management. So what we've seen, therefore, is the adoption of our technology is far easier than other platforms, right? And it requires a skill set that is different than a skill set that's required to adopt a technology built for a yield manager at an ad network, right? So I think overall the adoption can be hard, it can be easier, but software matters, and therefore focus of the underlying technology company matters.
Gustav, I mean, how are your agency clients dealing with the transition?
I think we're working very closely with the agencies right now to make sure that it's a new situation where you've got the trading desk, you've got the individual agencies, and we're trying to align our software to actually mirror that work process in the countries where we're working closely with these holding groups. And I think that's it's a very interesting process for us. We're getting much closer to the agencies and working with them around the buys, not just about what ad to show at what point in time, but also how do we make sure that they're actually able to buy using the right data coming in from the ad server, but also coming from third parties. So I think one of the things that we are trying to position ourselves as is that we can take all the great data from the ad server and actually make it available to the Xaxis of this world and to the agencies in a seamless platform, while the right decisions are being made at the right points in the agencies. So some decisions are being made by the agencies and some decisions are being made by Xaxis, and that's kind of the thing that we are trying to mirror in our systems. But also because the world is getting so much more complicated, and we're seeing that there's much more need for people, the types of people talking about with more mathematical, more consultative skills within our company to actually make sure that this happens at the right pace, because it is a big transition, and while the agencies are definitely getting wiser and cleverer and getting more people in there that are more math oriented and more business oriented, I think there's still a lot of need from some of the suppliers like ours, to actually help this, facilitate this, and make this happen.
But these people are not, they're not available on the ground. There's obviously a skill shortage, and the companies who are positioning themselves, the new players, could potentially win new businesses. I mean, is this an opportunity for new businesses to come through, and does the agency model have to shift more towards data and analytics? I mean, Shane, you've seen a lot of companies coming out of the startup phase.
I think I see the explosion in RTB growth, somewhat analogous to what happened in search 10 years ago. Organizational change is required at every level in this new game, and I think ultimately the relationship between the technology evolving and the companies who stand to benefit from that is very much a symbiotic one. And if you look at how SEM's evolved over the last 10 odd years, you see that not only organizationally have they needed to change rapidly and hire the right skill set, but their technology along with that has evolved. Obviously, there are key differences in terms of how display is very different from search. It's much more disparate. The supply sources are more difficult to lock down and so on. But I think at its core, it's quite similar, and we can see similar growth in display for sure. Nigel,
you're the friend of the ad network. I mean, is this a new huge opportunity for them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, ad networks, aggregation is obviously not a new concept. Certainly display, the reason that this is so important in display, we know that there are efficiencies in search because there's only a couple of people you can buy from. Therefore, it's going to be by default efficient. It might not be commercially viable, it might not be a great relationship, but it's efficient. And I think within the display landscape, if you're a large agency, you're probably buying from, I don't know, 400 display sources just in one country. And for that reason, we know that display needs aggregation in order to make it more efficient. In terms of the way that you're asking about the buy side, right, and the new companies that are emerging, the skill set, I think, is very, very clear. It's the way that you leverage the technology, and I think the points that Joel was making just before this panel was that the people are the ones who are going to make a difference to it. So if you've got fantastic people within your agency, you're going to leverage technology really, really well. Your clients are going to have a great experience. You're going to be able to build on top of it. You're going to have a sustainable business for decades to come. And if you're a startup, you can access the technology quickly. You can access all of these supply sources at exactly the same time as one of the largest agencies in the world. Now, that's never been available before. You won't get credit from large portals if you want to do a £5,000 campaign. You want to do a £1,000 campaign. Media owners say, sorry, that's below our minimum spend. So all of these barriers have gone. Now, if you can leverage data, manage reporting, and build on top of technology, yeah, the barriers don't exist. I don't see why not. It's a new age. So, I mean, it was interesting listening to the German panel before the break. By the way, the translators are doing a great job. And there was a quite testy. And it was an interesting point from the gentleman from Der Spiegel, saying that this channel is perceived as performance. It's just performance budget. Is there a threat that we are kind of ghettoizing ourselves into a performance corner, Brian? I mean, are you seeing more budget coming from the brands into this space? I mean, or do we still have a problem? I mean, there's been countless articles about VGRP and the new sort of display metric. I mean, what can we do to sort of address this perception of our space?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think performance is the ghetto, but I do think that this technology is about much more than performance. I mean, it just so happens that in most new media, performance advertisers are the first to take advantage of that media or that new technology. And certainly, there are a lot of shops in the world that do retargeting extremely well. But the fact of the matter is, retargeting is not that hard to do. So eventually, everybody's going to do it pretty well, right? Whether it's a DSP or a trading desk or an ad network, it's sort of, you're all looking for the same cookies. So I go back to what I said before. If in 2 years' time or 3 years' time we're still talking about this as a performance medium, we haven't done our jobs, because the technology really allows us to innovate. One of the things that we're doing in markets where data flows a little bit more freely, like the US, is we work with consumer packaged goods advertisers to take their substantial offline CRM database, match that anonymously to a cookie, and direct display and video ads to their internal customers in an anonymous way. And then on the reverse, we can then measure whether consumers go into stores and buy consumer products as a result of the display or video ads that we serve. That, in a way, you could think of that as direct response, but I think of that as brand advertising, effective brand advertising, because there's nothing better to measure the effectiveness of a brand than to see sales in a store. But it's not CPC, it's not CPA, which are, generally not very good metrics if you're a large global consumer packaged goods manufacturer. You're
talking about clever attribution then, effectively.
Yes.
All right. Well, Erich, do you think that maybe we are sort of painting ourselves into a corner in terms of it's seen as a performance channel as opposed to a brand channel?
I think the collection of technology and companies and those who are utilizing them effectively increasingly do a better job of educating the market about what automation means for business and how users are accessing the web, how we are meeting that supply with demand. I think for a while, the rap on RTB was, and accordingly DSPs, was that DSPs are a price erosion mechanism, and RTB is an environment where prices get eroded. As we develop, as we innovate on behalf of our respective constituencies, things like transparency into data, into media, measurability, as Brian was saying, accountability to spend in the offline environment, these kinds of things attract more brand spend, incremental brand spend to the space, and hedge against what we know today, which is that the RTB channels are wonderful environments for direct response, traditional direct response online. So it's sort of part of the evolution. Different markets are certainly different, but the advent of third-party data and looking inward into a CRM database is certainly, you can see how the brand proposition comes to fruition right now.
Yeah, Gustav, do you think that that's going to happen? The brand budget will come into this channel eventually?
I'm convinced that this is a perfect channel for brand advertising.
What would you say to the publishers, the sales houses who are saying, no, premium is premium, it doesn't belong in this channel?
No, I think that publishers are going to benefit from this as much as anyone from higher CPMs going forward. I think the ability to micro target segments. I think the ability to bring in some of the brand exposure, duration, visibility into the buying is going to make a big difference. I mean, we just need some more inventory online. We just need some better data. But I think the infrastructure, the whole technology is kind of it's a clear goal that this is going to happen.
Sorry.
Basically, just going to make the point that I think the innovation for brands is happening on two levels. Obviously, it's early days for more brand compatible formats that are traded in the RTB ecosystem. But additionally, I think sales teams at online media owners are beginning to innovate and focus more on things like social integration and more brand-centric activity like partnerships, sponsorship, microsite, micro-content, as a consequence of the efficiencies that they're seeing through RTB.
Can I have one more point on that?
Go ahead,
because Ciarian, you said something about publishers not wanting to contribute inventory into this channel. I think we need to stop thinking about this as a channel. Real-time buying of advertising does not necessarily involve an auction. And in many cases, an auction is not going to be good for publishers. In many cases, it may be, if you have the right strategy. From our perspective, this isn't a channel. This is simply a new way of buying media that's more associated with audiences than content exclusively. So I would say, publishers, if they have good relationships with agencies and trading desks, should continue to have those direct relationships. But as much as possible, we want to automate that relationship, which most times, and in our case, will not involve an auction or an open exchange. Well,
that seems to be the fear here, though. They think it's just put it on an exchange and let people bid on it, and cheapen the value of the inventory. Where you've got private exchanges where you can set floor prices.
I think certainly talking to that point, one of the key reasons for this is that the trend in the market, which is understandable because it's technology, is to outsource this function. So you're not controlling your inventory anymore. You're giving it to another company who's controlling your inventory. And for that reason, they've got their own agenda. As a supplier, especially if you're a large supplier, you should be controlling the inventory yourself. Who knows better how to sell your inventory? The network that you waterfall it to, or the outsourced real-time company that you're giving your inventory to. That doesn't genuinely make any sense in the long term. You have to have these things in-house. And if they're in-house, as Ciarian exactly said, you've got complete control of how much you sell your inventory for. If you don't want to sell it for less than €5, don't. If you want to set up a private relationship with a large buyer, and you happen to operate on a platform, you can do that from your desktop in the time it takes you to refresh your browser. I don't really understand why this fear exists. I think it's unfortunately due to a lack of transparency and a lack of, let's say, context or feedback from some of the partners that large companies are still outsourcing this function to. I think until we see that coming back to the people who are in control, that's an unfortunate consequence.
All right, I'm conscious that we're running over time. We're just going to open it up to the floor for 2 questions, and if there's no questions, then I'll ask one last question. I want to ask Brian something, actually, because I only get a chance to talk to him once. So if there's any questions from the floor, I appreciate it's an English panel. None. Germans, seriously. I'm only joking. Brian, just one last question. You're surrounded by technology companies here, and I'm just wondering, as your business develops, are you likely to build your own tech in-house? I know you bought 24/7 Media, that was part of one acquisition a couple of years ago, but will there be a trend among big holding groups to build their own tech?
No, I don't think it will be a trend. I think that generally agencies are not good at these types of investments. WBP happens to be different in its approach and its strategy, but we are not out to build the full technology stack. And if we tried, we would probably not be successful. We fundamentally believe that there are pieces of the technology stack that we need to build and own in the best interests of our clients, to give our clients competitive advantage. But if any time we find that our technology is not providing that benefit, then we use third-party technologies. I mean, we use lots of third-party DSPs. We've also built our own. The other thing that's important is, since we're the only agency that's built the technology, we're actually in a much better position to evaluate all of the other technologies. We know MediaMath very well, and I would argue that we can understand the benefits of MediaMath having gone through a similar route. So in no way are we trying to run all of our advertisers' dollars through our own proprietary technology, but we are building it to their specs. So in many cases, it is the best technology to use, and if it's not, we'll use something else.
And if you had $1 billion, which of these 4 companies would you buy, Brian?
I'm wondering which of these companies is going to buy us.
Right, gentlemen, thanks very much. A little round of applause for the audience.